Good evening and welcome. It is time once again for CU Immigration here on WRFU LP Urbana 104.5 FM. I will be your host for this evening. My name is Mr. Garza, and I'm here to let you know that WRFU is an open forum for the Urbana-Champaign community. Views expressed are those of the speakers and are not intended to represent WRFU, UCIMC, Urbana Socialist Forum, or as we like to say on the televised version of this show, UPTV. These views are our own, and by our, in this instance, I mean myself, and or any views that may creep into whatever I may read in the realm of news articles. But the views are my own, so blame me, don't blame any of those guys. So I'm here, well, as always, we're here to talk about immigration. We, why do I say we? We, the editorial we, are here to talk about immigration. But in this particular episode, I want to stress the topic of voting. Elections are coming up. In case you hadn't noticed, the midterms are coming up. Generally speaking, midterms are a time when not as many people go out to vote. It's not like lots of people go out to vote even at the big presidential election, but even less people go to vote in the midterms. And so I am going to hopefully inspire you a little bit to, at least in this instance, change that dynamic. I would like to see more people even than vote regularly every 4 years for the presidential election. I would like to see more people than that voting at the midterms. And I say that because this is a particularly important election. Right now, the three branches of government, or three of the branches of government, however you care to look at that, are all in the hands of a single party. And that party has pretty much almost entirely turned itself over to the executive branch. We all know who that is. I don't need to state that name anymore. And just said, whatever you want to do, go ahead. We'll just go along with you because you're also giving us things that we want. I don't suppose that your average Republican is really all that fond of the president. I know that he has a very fired up base, but I don't suppose that beyond that base there are all that many Republicans who are really very fond of him. But he has cannily, I will say, used his I'm not even sure of the word here to use. Used his fire, his passion, his whatever it is that drives him to win at any cost. Whatever that force within him is, he's used that to at least generally, if not exclusively, push policies that are more or less favored by the average Republican. So they're pretty pleased in the sense that they're like, well, I don't necessarily like this guy, but I like what he's doing for the most part, and he's getting stuff done that Republicans have wanted to do for a long time but have not been able to do. Now, the fact that they have not been able to do it because they were more or less operating within the bounds of rational traditional behavior seems to be beside the point. It's like they don't care. Winning at any cost is what they want because they are afraid. They're afraid. They know that the base, the Republican base, is shrinking and will continue to shrink in all likelihood, and that change is coming, and they're trying to put that off, so they're afraid. Yeah, I'm trying to think of how. I'm pausing here. I'm trying to think of how to do this show in such a way where I'm not endorsing candidates or telling you how to vote or anything like that. It's pretty clear to longtime listeners, I am sure, which way I lean in terms of right and left. So this is tricky. This is a tricky show for me to do because what I really want is to promote voting, participation, and also at the same time I want to explain why it would be in your best interest and in our collective best interest if you vote the current ruling party out of its ruling status in every way that's possible. And that's difficult to do without obviously, taking a political stand. So I guess what we can do is look at this through the prism of immigration. Now, immigration, that word encompasses a huge cross-section of people and purposes and stories and directions and situations. It's a big word that is generally used as a blanket term, across the board as just kind of a how can I put it? It's used to describe all sorts of things, but it generally means, when people talk about immigration, it generally means what they're discussing are people they don't want coming here. That's kind of it, really. If you think of all the different, or people that a segment of the society doesn't want coming here. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. So I'm not really quite sure how to, describe the topic in terms of this show. To me, what I mean when I talk about immigration is sort of more broad. It's like people coming here from other countries who want to live, who want to work, who are interested in something about this culture and they want to participate in it, who are interested in this part of the earth. They like the land, let's say. They like mountains, or they like prairies, or whatever. Whatever their reason is, they want to come here and participate in our society in some way or other. I think that's a good thing. I think immigration is, generally speaking, far more of a good thing than a bad thing. So that's my position here on this topic, is that I think immigration is a benefit across the board. There are, of course, always pluses and minuses to any question. And so if you want to get down into the specifics of individual cases, you can certainly find immigrants who are coming here who are taking things away, who are not providing a benefit to society, the existing society here. You can certainly find examples of that. I think, though, overall, more people who come here provide some benefit to the people that are already here than the few that may come and detract in some way. That is my position. I say that both because of sort of a general knowledge about immigration and having studied the issue, the various issues that fall under that, umbrella term, and knowing lots of immigrants and having known lots of immigrants over the years and being the son of immigrants. So I've observed the people that I know and the people relations and all these different things and have arrived at this position. Others have differing positions. And so I have tried, since I have taken immigration as a topic of interest that I'm put my time and energy into and saying, okay, this is something that's important to me. This is an issue that I care about, that I'm going to work on, that I'm going to try to affect change, at least within the limits of my ability here. I have striven, there's a term you don't hear very often. I have striven to understand the position on the quote-unquote other side. That being that immigration is a negative thing. We need to close the doors. We need to stop letting people in. That they're creating problems. That they're taking something away from us. We're losing something because of all these people coming here. So I've tried to understand that to the extent that it is possible. Now I can sort of twist my brain around and imagine being someone that would have that kind of opinion, but I can't retain the values that I have in terms of how I think people should be towards people, how our society should be towards others, and so on. I cannot do that and understand this contrary position. I can understand that position if I reject a lot of things that to me are unarguable, inarguable, unarguable, inarguable. I don't know. Anyway, things that I am not flexible on these opinions. I think people should help one another. Let's say, we'll take that as just a starting point. I think people should help one another. I think that we have advanced from hunter-gatherers to creating civilizations, and we have done so through cooperation, through helping one another. I don't believe that cooperation and helping one another should only be limited to a certain ethnic group, a certain national boundary, people who live within a certain national boundary, and so on and so forth. This kind of thinking is often called tribalism. That term bothers me because of the way it sort of includes indigenous people in their sense of tribes, their thinking, and their basing their social system around the notion of tribes. But I get, and I think you get, when you hear that word, I think you get what is being trying to be defined by it, what people are trying to define by using it, which is this notion that we is a very limited thing. It's only people who think the same way, or look the same way, or talk the same way, or have the same belief system, or whatever it is. Communities of like-minded individuals, I guess you might call it. So my philosophy is broader than that. My philosophy is that people helping one another, sharing resources, sharing ideas, sharing effort, sharing hopes, all those different kinds of things, that applies across the board, not to like-minded communities, not simply to people who have the same belief system, the same language, the same culture, the same whatever. I think it is all the way across the board. I think people should help animals. I think we should be doing things for the other creatures on the earth. So that's kind of like a philosophy that I have. I think we should be helping each other, that we are all part of an interconnected system, and that all the parts of that system are important, and they should all, to the best of our ability, be arranged to work together for the common good. So that's a belief system that I have, and that partly leads me to being pro-immigrant, because here are people coming here from some other place for whatever reason, and they don't know the territory, they don't know how things work here, they don't necessarily know the language or whatever. These things are new to them, so it is incumbent upon those of us who are here to say, hey, welcome, here's how stuff works, here's where you go for that, here's who you see to find out this information, and so on. That is being helpful. Others don't feel that way, and they feel like, well, if you don't know those things already, or if you're not one of us, you shouldn't be coming here, because your coming here inevitably changes us in some way. To me, that's a good thing. Change is good. Growth is good. I like learning new things. I like acquiring new tastes and new ideas. To me, that is a completely positive thing, that someone coming here will change the way I do things, or the way I think about things, or the way things are, so to speak. Others don't see it that way. They feel like we've got things the way we want them, and people coming here either need to adapt to us entirely, or they shouldn't be here because they're going to change us, and change is bad. So those are, two various ways of looking at things. So my larger point, without going piece by piece here, is just, as I said earlier, that my philosophy of life, let's put it that way, my standards, my ethics, my morals, however you wanted to define them, tell me to encourage and welcome immigrants, because those are people who want to be here. I'm here. They want to be here, so they want to join me here in some way. And so I should welcome them based on the sum total of my various beliefs and feelings. There are others that don't feel that way. So I can understand them, but I cannot believe what I believe and agree that they have a valid point of view. All points of view, I suppose, are valid to the extent that, you have a point of view, therefore it's yours, it exists, therefore it is valid in the sense that it is an existing point of view. I'm not going to pretend that your point of view simply does not exist because it doesn't agree with mine, but if it differs in a fundamental way that requires me to alter my belief system, what I believe to be true about life, about people, whatever, then I cannot accept it. I think it is wrong. It's valid, you're welcome to it, but you're wrong. And that is my feeling about those on the quote-unquote other side. And I realize there are all sorts of sides to things. There's not just two. But there is definitely a side in the current debate on immigration that is pretty much diametrically opposed to mine in just about every way. And our current president seems to hold that position. And enough people in his party support it that the rest of the party, even if they don't agree with it, are going along with that. So to my mind, that would be one very important point for why we need to at least change the balance of power in this country so that there is some counterweight against that that can say, no, that's not right. No, you're going too far. No, that is the wrong thing to do, and we have the power to stop you. Right now, that's not the case. So whatever you may think about the individual issues up and down the ballot, it is very important at this time to restore some balance of power to this nation, to this nation's government, I guess you might say. So to that end, let me read a couple of articles here. The first one is regarding the current president's plans, future plans on immigration. And we'll notice some points here as we go based on quotes that I would like you to consider what belief system one might have that would allow them to say this kind of thing. So this article is as follows. President Trump said migrant families may think twice about illegally crossing the U.S. border from Mexico if they fear they'll be separated by the U.S. government, suggesting he's rethinking a policy abandoned in July after widespread public condemnation. Quote, "We have people trying to come in like never before," end quote. Trump told reporters as he departed the White House on Saturday for a campaign rally in Richmond, Kentucky. Quote, "If they feel there will be separation, then they won't come." End quote. He also added, "I want a lot of people to come in, but they must do so legally." Don't know about that. The Washington Post reported on Friday that the White House was reconsidering a policy known as zero tolerance that caused nearly 3,000 children to be taken from their caregivers and placed in federal custody after they were apprehended crossing the border earlier this year. Members of Congress of both parties criticized the policy and the plight of the children held in detention centers run by government contractors for weeks or months apart from their parents or guardians caused broad outrage among the American public. Trump issued an order in July to end the practice, but on Saturday he said some migrant parents wouldn't risk an illegal border crossing if it meant losing their children. Well, yeah, they also probably wouldn't if it meant having their head cut off. Sorry, editorial aside there. So, quote, "If they fear the separation, in many cases they don't come," Trump said, adding that some really bad people are using others' children to pose as their own while attempting to enter the country. Quote, "They haven't known the children for 20 minutes and they grab children and they use them to come into our country," Trump told reporters without offering evidence. Trump spoke about immigration at length during more than an hour of remarks to the crowd of about 6,000 in Kentucky. He focused on so-called chain migration, the process by which legal immigrants help foreign-born family members come to the U.S., and the diversity immigration visa program, often known as the Green Card Lottery, a system created by bipartisan support in 1990. Quote, "We're stuck with these people, and I don't want a chain," Trump said of some people who've come to the U.S. via such family reunification. "I want people to come into our country on a merit-based system." Trump said at the White House that he'd accept families crossing together under a merit basis and said his administration is working on such a policy. He noted that migrants are needed to meet the strong economy's increased demand for labor. Quote, "Frankly, we need people coming in because we have a lot of companies moving back in. Jobs are coming back in," Trump said. "What I want is merit. I want a lot of people to come in." Trump said immigration is a tricky issue and that his comments aren't being influenced by midterm elections, now less than a month away, which will decide which party controls Congress. "You have to do the right thing whether there's an election or not," he said. Among those traveling with Trump on Saturday evening was senior advisor Stephen Miller, the main architect of the administration's approach on immigration. Trump introduced both U.S. senators from Kentucky at the rally, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and Rand Paul. With a continued majority in the Senate, Republicans Republicans can continue to confirm Republican-nominated judges at a record pace and change the U.S. court system, quote, forever, McConnell said. So, sorry for the editorial aside, but it's really hard. If there is anyone in the world that loves to use the straw man argument, it would be Trump. For those who are unfamiliar with the term, straw man argument is where you invent someone to have an attitude or to do something in particular, and then you argue against them. So it would be like me saying something along the lines of, some people come to this radio station and they demand to be let in when I'm doing my show because they disagree with what I'm saying. But you know what? I'm not going to let them in. I'm going to keep the door locked, and it's too bad for them. They can't come in. So actually, there's no one who comes here and demands to get in. But I'm inventing a straw man, not a real person, but one made of straw. And then I am winning the argument against this person who doesn't exist. But I'm using them to bolster my argument. And Trump does that all the time. And it's just so annoying to listen to the things he says. And it's frightening to listen to the things he says. For example, quote, some really bad people are using others' children to pose as their own while attempting to enter the country. Now, how do we know this? I don't know. Is there any evidence? No, he doesn't offer evidence. Quote, they have known the children for 20 minutes and they grab children and they use them to come into our country. So he's creating this straw man of somebody somewhere grabbing children and saying, okay, kid, you're going to pretend to be my kid, and I'll use you to get into this country. Now, do you suppose this has ever happened? Possibly. It may have happened at some place, sometime, somewhere. Someone may have done this. So I'm not saying it is absolutely impossible that anyone ever did this. Is it common? Obviously not. Is it even a problem? No. There is no evidence. Trump didn't even offer any evidence. I have never seen any evidence that this is indeed a problem or a difficulty. At worst, you might have, say, distant family members claiming children as their own as a way of kind of getting the children in and getting themselves in too. So it's like, hey, I'll bring your kids to you, but we'll cross the border together and I'll just say they're my kids so that we can both get in. That may be something that happens. I don't know. Again, I'm just making this up as a possibility, saying this could happen as a way of potentially excusing this statement on Trump's part. And I don't know why I would be potentially excusing any of his statements, but let's say for the sake of being absolutely as generous as possible, there may be instances where literal parents and children, families, are not necessarily coming in together. There may be instances where sometimes extended families or friends of families might bring children together and say they're a family in order to get the children